All right, good morning and hello everyone. Welcome back to our virtual educational event. I'm Brett Norton from Beyond Clean. And before we get started with this next presentation, I'd like to call everyone's attention to the features on your screen. All the windows that you see are movable, so feel free to shrink, enlarge, or move them around to make your event experience fit your preferences. On the lower left, you will see a Q&A window. Throughout each presentation, we really do encourage you to send in your questions for the speakers to answer during our Q&A session. In the upper right, you will see a resources window where you'll find additional resources to download and access the materials that are provided to you by our sponsor, 3M. So don't forget, you'll also find free bonus CE content for today's conference in the resources window. Our next speaker, Dr. Jim Stobinski, is the CEO of CCI and the CCI Research Foundation. He has over 25 years of experience in perioperative nursing and holds a PhD in international health research. He maintains an active research agenda centered on nursing demographics and patient outcome studies. Dr. Stobinski is passionate about connecting frontline professionals to educational opportunities. He has extensive speaking experience at the national level and is a published author in peer-reviewed journals such as AORN Journal and the Journal of Nursing Administration. Credentialing bodies have played a key role in American healthcare professions for decades. Jim is here to help us explore the new trends in credentialing, explain the role of certification bodies in continuous professional development, and detail the concept of microcredentials. You'll be glad you tuned in for this eye-opening educational tell-all. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jim Stobinski.
All right, thanks, Brett. So I'm Jim Stobinski. Brett did a great job of introducing me. I speak quite often with Beyond Clean, and let's get started because I do about an hour of content. So those are my credentials. This is the title of my presentation, but I'm going to talk to you about credentialing and certification, how it's evolving, and how it really works well, especially in the operating room with all the different disciplines that are there. So Brett already gave you my objectives. Let's not read them to you again, but here they are. I also, whenever CCI speakers present, we do have to show you this disclaimer. So our programs are accredited, and we do have to show you this. So if you're a nurse or sterile processing professional and you take our education courses, do any of that, there are no guarantees just because you listen to Jim talk that you're going to get a better grade, your research is going to go better. That's the basis of this slide. So here's my background. Brett was being kind. I've actually been around. I've started working in the operating rooms in the early 80s. And I actually came to it a bit late. But in the early 80s, I was going to nursing school and worked as an orderly. I started out as a janitor in the operating room. While I was in nursing school, worked as what used to be called orderlies, became a nurse, and then rejoined the military. And they were very good about paying for my education, which eventually brought me to a PhD. But a lot of the work that I do is focused on certification, credentialing, and how it makes a difference in healthcare. So let's talk a little bit about the history of credentialing. And credentialing is a big, wide term. It's like the big tent. And credentialing encompasses a lot of things, which is part of what I'm going to talk to you about. Credentialing involves certification. Taking a test is what it's been for many years. Take a test, pass the test, put initials after your name. But now we have all kinds of things to go with that. Certificates of mastery, digital badges, micro-credentials. a lot of different things, but credentialing and certification has really been around now almost 80 years. It started around the end of World War II, and the first group that started doing certification was nurse anesthetists. Credentialing and certification in the healthcare professions really took off in the 70s, and I'm going to talk to you about a number of groups that are in the operating room and sterile processing that do credentialing. But CCI in this field, we weren't the first. But it really took off in the 70s, as you're going to see. But a very influential publication is the cover I'm showing you right here. The groundwork for what certification, where it really took off and got established, was this publication. I do not have access to a copy. I recently got the actual paper copy in my hand, but this document is owned by ANCC. It's a fascinating historical look about credentialing. We're hoping that we can get a PDF scan of it done because it's a very important document. But the point, forever, whether you've been in sterile processing, nursing, medicine, credentialing bodies were typically set up by some sort of membership organization. Membership almost always comes first. They put up the resources to begin credentialing and do certifications. And then for many years, there was a close tie between the membership organization, the certifying entity, and it was just well established and just presumed it's important. They work closely together. It's a good thing for our profession. But that is slowly changing. So I'm going to talk mainly about sterile processing. And there are two big bodies doing certification and credentialing in sterile processing. And then there's CCI that I work for. We do credentialing for perioperative nurses. But these are three big groups I'm going to keep referring to. So there are a lot of credentials in the operating room. And I'm only now talking about essentially the voluntary ones. You don't have to have them to work, but many people do. These are just some of the groups that CCI works with that are in the operating room and doing certification, to include the assistants that work in surgery, for the people that work in sterile processing, supply chain, the surgical techs. Not going to talk a lot about them because their credentials are a little different. They're not my focus. But the point is, there's a lot of credentials in the operating room because we have a lot of different groups that must work closely together in the operating room. So there's a change underway right now about certifying bodies. Previously, I told you they were started by memberships, assumed to be important, have existed for decades, but they followed a very familiar pattern. You studied for an exam, you took an exam, usually multiple choice, you passed the exam, you put initials after your name, and then maintain that at a periodic interval, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. You would do something else, hand in CEs, pay a fee, you might retest, but all the certification bodies follow a very similar course. Certification bodies, mainly because of accreditation standards, have to change. So it used to be they were thought of like kind of a quasi-regulatory record-keeping body that just kept records of your tests and your CEs. They are transitioning now to being partners for the certificants and other stakeholders like the employers. And they're trying to be more responsive and attentive to the needs of stakeholders. But the bottom line here, they're changing. There are more credentials, types of credentials, certifications being offered. And I'm going to talk to you about those mainly for sterile processing and nurses that work in the operating room. So here's a comparison. On one side, I say old model. kind of the old traditional model that's been around really since the end of World War II. Certification, largely voluntary. Typically, many states don't require you to be certified to work. That is actually much more prevalent with sterile processing than nursing. There wasn't a lot of research on how certifications improve outcomes, how they make you better, how the whole credentialing thing fit in. But that's the old model. And these certification bodies were seen as kind of a quasi-regulatory thing, like a registry, a board of nursing. And most of the research requirements just involve CE, continuing education, and there weren't that many legal or regulatory mandates about certification in the workplace. But now we're seeing increasingly encouragement, incentives from employers, and an increasing body of evidence supporting certification and its benefits. And I'll use the term right now, certification and credentialing, interchangeably, but increasingly there is a distinction, but we'll get to that later. But these bodies now are providing resources, and they want to be your partner in career development. And they're trying to be more responsive and not just kind of this regulatory thing. And things like self-directed learning, reflective learning exercise, alternative methods, things besides CE are increasingly found. And especially in sterile processing, now there are actually laws and regulations, as you're well aware, that you have to be certified in some states to work. That is not the case for nursing, unless you're an advanced practice nurse. For most other nurses, you just need to have a valid license to work. So, and one very important word is now in the conversation, and that's competency. So, this is a very good recent definition of competency, but this involves knowledge, judgment, skills, values, attitude. These are all the components of competency. And the issue is that accrediting bodies for our credentials, our certification programs, now the standard is we have to demonstrate how credentialing, how our certifications help you to maintain and enhance your competency. So we're not just a record-keeping body. Theoretically, this is what commonly thought of, the things that contribute to your competency, your quality, skill, performance over time, that you can hold the standards, meet them reliably. So these are the components: knowledge, skills, aptitude, or attitude. And this is an example from a nursing accreditation body. This is the standard that certification boards, organizations are held to, that you have a recertification program that requires the certificates to maintain current knowledge, and we have to provide documentation on how competence or competency in a specialty is maintained and measured over time. That is a lot different thing than just proving we can keep a secure file for your CE and your test. So credentialing bodies, now we administer tests. So competence, this is an important distinction. Competence is your potential ability to do the job well. Potential. And usually what we've done is we measure your knowledge. And so we say, if you have the knowledge, that you can perform. That's a big leap from having just knowledge, one part of competency, and you can actually do it well over time. So we're now tasked, if we want to maintain accredited programs, we are tasked to ensure that you possess competency, it's measured over time, and that you maintain it. There are programs contribute to your competency. Now, that presents both challenges and opportunity. But the thing on testing, people think that if you can develop a test, and they usually think of multiple choice questions, you put together a test that, and a lot of people do this, education programs, they put together a test, and then they like to say that you're credentialed or you're certified. Not quite that easy. So this is the standard. This is a statement about one of our certifications. This is what you can say about tests that are developed by credentialing bodies. This is the difference between somebody writing questions and a valid, reliable test that is used by credentialing agencies like CCI. So the other thing now about certification, how this is all changing, is stakeholders, to include employers, they're asking us to demonstrate our value. Because if they're going to reimburse employees, pay them to get CE, do this professional development, resources are tight. And they want to know, how do you demonstrate value besides they feel good about themselves and to get initials after their name? This is a big challenge because historically, certification bodies, the membership organization started them, and it was always assumed that they had good value. And nobody really challenged that, but now they are. And it's really caused some kind of unsettled times. This is all new for credentialing bodies, certification boards, and it's really caused some rough seas. It's very unsettling when you've been around for decades, doing business the same way, doing quite well. Groups like ISHM, CBSPD, you've been doing this for decades and doing it well. A lot of people hold your credentials, and then people start asking really tough questions like this. So it's caused certification, groups that do certification, it's caused us to reassess our programs and to change them. The question really now is, what do our certificates need and want? And really, employers, lawmakers who are involved in this, how does certification and credentialing, how does this provide value? What are our if these things are changing, what our certificates need and want, and how does this whole process add value for American healthcare? So if anybody knows who this is, write that in the chat box. It's really the guy in the middle. So the point, certification bodies and membership groups are really both are kind of reinventing themselves simultaneously. And it's a very interesting process to watch it play out. I'm looking in the chat. I don't see anybody has made an entry. So I'll tell you. The guy in the middle with the really fierce black mustache, his name's Frank Zappa. He's deceased now. But the name of the group was Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. So the point, certification bodies and membership organizations are re-examining what they do, and each of them are kind of reinventing themselves simultaneously. So there's an overlap because the distinction between membership and certification for a long time was really clear. Now that's changing and it's causing some tension and really some friction. This is, I do woodworking. This is a picture of sandpaper, but there is a fair amount of friction between some membership groups and certification bodies because certification, if your certifications are popular and you do business well, you will generate income. For years, that income, typically you would sustain your certifications, but a lot of the income and the revenue went back to membership. And now certification bodies by accreditation standards have to be autonomous. They can't be a very tight connection to membership, and that is causing friction between these groups. So some examples of all of these things I've been telling you about. This is an example, and I'm going to cite a number of examples from CCI because that's my company. So we are developing things like online enduring materials. And instead of the old model where you had to go to an event or a meeting and attend and go to courses and listen to people present to earn your CEs, now increasingly certification bodies have things like learning management systems, and they create online enduring materials that if you get access, and this is typically through holding a certification, that you just go online any time of the day or night and do these materials at your own pace. And there's a wide diversity of them. Do them at your own pace, and then those are tracked by the certification board, the organization, and that contributes to your recertification process. An example here, the podcasts that are done by Beyond Clean, after they're done, we eventually get some of those, and they go into a library of learning materials, professional development materials that CCI has in the beginning only for nurses, but I'm going to tell you how that's changing. But you can go on 24/7 if you hold one of our credentials, listen to a podcast, take a short quiz, and then we keep records, and that eventually adds up, and then you can research. So it's a much different model than just attending a course or a meeting and getting a certificate. So this is a picture of a screenshot of our learning management system, but we have podcast micro-credentials, certificates of mastery that are available through this system. These things are complex, they're expensive. Ours is called Learn Upon. There's any number of them. Learn Upon, Blackboard, D2L, there's all kinds of them. But increasingly, certification boards, instead of just CE, they have things like this. And these are all the different activities that you can earn points. You can even do crossword puzzles and earn points towards your research with us. And coincidentally, this is CBSPD. This is a picture of their website. I'm going to show you this for each of the certification boards. This is an accreditation requirement that they have to post this. So for CBSPD and ISHM and CCI, the surgical techs have to do this. Surgeons, anesthesia providers have to do this. There's common elements because we're all accredited by similar organizations. So these are the statistics about CBSPD that I pulled a few weeks ago, how many credentials that they offer, and you can see there's 8 of them. This is another trend in credentialing and certification, that a certification board offers more credentials. And in their history, they've been doing this since 1991. But they're not the first of these organizations. That's about 40, 45 years after credentialing certification started to happen at the end of World War II. So, but this is their certification requirements. If you notice, they offer points. You can get credit for doing other activities rather than just doing CE. If this looks similar to what CCI does, it is. We are CNOR, which is our biggest credential, is accredited by the same organization that CBSPD has their credentials. And to be clear, CCI is not accredited. It's each program. So for all of those credentials from CBSPD, Not all of them are yet accredited, but we have a common accreditation body. So this is ISHM. And among the three organizations, I got to give a shout out to ISHM. They started doing certifications in 1971. So these are their statistics. Again, NCCA is our common accreditation body. I believe that's the National Commission on Certifying Agencies. We all of us have the same rules, the same guidelines about maintaining competency, what we measure, how we keep our records, that we have to post these statistics. This is all common, which presents opportunities for us to work together. And Brett told you that I'm the CEO of the CCI Research Foundation. ISHM has a foundation too. So there are many things that we do in a similar fashion. The CCI Research Foundation and CCI, we've given grants for people to do professional development, earn credentials, provide scholarships. You'll note that's exactly what ISHM does. It's the same sort of process that we're all serving people that work in the operating room. I will also note that if you look at the color scheme, if you have a web-enabled device, put in the CCI Research Foundation. Somehow we came to a very familiar color scheme for both of our foundation websites. It's pretty interesting. So this is the CCI Research Foundation. Pure coincidence, but our colors are very similar. In 3 years, CCI has funded $442,000 worth of research, mainly done by nurses, but some by other professions, to study things like, does credentialing and certification make a difference? So we're a substantial source of funding for this research. We also, this is part of the value that we bring to the profession, we also have this instrument which we own. So if you want to do research about how does certification work, what is its value, we actually have this instrument, and we allow people to use it to do research, and we have a version of the instrument that can be used in sterile processing. So you can contact me about how do you use this instrument and how CCI can help you, because we'll even build it into a survey, give you a survey link, and let you use this to study what value does certification have for sterile processing professionals. So certification boards, all of us, the big three that I've been telling you about, CBSPD, ISHM, CCI, we are trying to shift and respond to the needs of stakeholders, certificates, employers, and really react to things like new laws. And it's a very deliberate strategic process in how we shift. We are trying, all of us are trying to better know our stakeholders, what are their needs, and we're trying to meet them. And at the same time, figure out how do we meet these changing and more rigorous accreditation standards. For CCI, we have a number of initiatives where we're actually, instead of just administering certifications, we're trying to engage the people who earn our credentials or have some sort of stake. We now have an emerging professional advisory committee of nurses that have less than 2 years experience in the OR. This is brand new. And so we're actually asking them, what do you think of our credentials? What can we do to make them better? How do they meet your needs? And in 2022, we will start a military advisory committee. The quality of education in the military is top notch. For surgical techs, nurses, they also, a lot of techs, people that work in sterile processing now, did have a connection to the military. So we're setting up an advisory committee of people that are in the military, veterans, and to learn how we can make our programs better and better integrate them into the military system. And this will start in 2022. We also have a DEI initiative, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You'll find out more about that in 2022. As we make more resources available to under-resourced, like rural critical access hospitals, how can we get them the benefit of all our materials, our online enduring materials? How do we get better access if you're not in a suburban hospital, but you're a little 4-room OR in rural New Mexico? How do we get materials to you? So you'll see more of this in 2022. In addition, we're trying to reach nurses before they even enter the operating room, engage them, tell them about the operating room, and then hopefully make a good impression that they're going to want to become an operating room nurse and eventually get certified, because that has value. So CCI, the 3 nurses that work at CCI, we actually teach a remote pre-licensure before they become an RN. When they're seniors in nursing school, we teach an introduction to the operating room course at this small liberal arts college in Madison, Wisconsin. And that's a picture of Edgewood, which is a beautiful campus. But this is a course that we teach to engage people early and tell them about the value of nursing in the operating room, credentialing, why you should be certified. This can be done. We could reach high school students. We could reach people that are at community college trying to figure out what they want to do, and tell them about how you can make a career out of being a sterile processing, central processing professional. This is sort of things we could do. These are not cheap programs. You have to devote resources, but this is how you can engage with the people who are stakeholders for your credentials. So now I told you there's a lot of new stuff going on in credentialing. Let's talk about stackable credentials. And there are actually 2 examples. One is CCI in nursing, but the other one involves Beyond Clean. This is a definition from the Department of Labor. These are not currently widely used, but CCI has just started. In other professions like IT, human resources, they use these now. So we now have a new credential that comes before CNOR. It's called CFPN, Certified Foundational Perioperative Nurse. This is an example of a stackable credential. Why would we do this? Because CFPN can be done before CNOR. You don't have to wait for 2 years of practice. If you hold CFPN, you can then go on. You must go on, because CFPN only lasts for 2 years. You must go on for another credential. But you can earn CFPN and then stack on that and go to other credentials. If you hold CFPN, which is pretty rigorous, at 18 months experience, you can test for CNOR. We assess all the components of competency. Knowledge, skills, and aptitude are all part of earning CFPN, and it really gives you a complete picture of the candidate. So, how credentials are done and how they're documented, they're also changing. So, we work with a company called Credentialing. They issue digital badges. So not just a certificate that you put in a frame and hang up in your den or your office at work. These are our digital badges that support CFPN. So on all of the text that you see, if you were to Google on your web-enabled device CFPN and digital badge, you would eventually get to someone's LinkedIn profile or their Facebook account, and these symbols would be there. These are each of the 4 steps of earning this credential, passing a knowledge-based test, and doing these other activities. And each one of these earns you a digital badge. If you choose to share the digital badge, somebody can click on that and then see, what was on that knowledge-based test, not your score, but what was on the test, what were you tested on, and what does it mean if you pass that and hold this digital badge? These are things that are being offered by credentialing boards that go beyond just certification. So I told you certification boards are doing new things. So Buzz Lightyear, to infinity and beyond. What are we doing? What are these certification boards doing beyond just certification? So new things. And we do microcredentials. And we do one of these, and I'll show you an example with Beyond Clean. Beyond Clean developed the content. It's called a microcredential. It's a distinct bit of knowledge, usually concentrated in just one subject. It's similar to certification. It's rigorous, but you don't get initials after your name, but you can study in one topic, develop your competency in an area that is of interest to you or you need to build your professional development. It's another means of recognition. So these things, they bridge a gap in your practice. They assess skills and knowledge that you might not have gotten earlier. There are things that are happening now in the operating room in nursing that didn't exist when people like Jim went to nursing school in the early 80s. We did not have robotic surgery, an example. So these are things to address gaps in your knowledge and your competency and concentrated in one area. This is one thing that we offer micro-credential business operations. They're relevant, industry-specific, tailored to your learning needs. And they actually assess competency, your actual performance. They're straightforward, they're quick, and they're efficient. CCI is also doing things like certificates of mastery. But let me make a point. There are accreditation processes available for certifications, which right now are take a test, pass the test, get initials after your name. That's kind of the common thing of certifications right now. There are accreditation standardizations right now for those. However, there are other things that micro-credential that I just told you about. Those don't yet have accreditation standards. So there's a lot of diversity in how those are done, titles, how people use those terms. So we also offer certificates of mastery, which assess competency, but they don't give you initials after your name. We have one that we will actually deliver it in mid-December for perioperative nurse educators that work in the operating room. We have a certificate of mastery. There are accreditation bodies to ensure rigor for these and validity, that they actually do what they say they're going to do. There's accreditation bodies for certificates of mastery. They're new. Not many bodies have done it. There's only 2 that I know of in all of nursing, but these are the new things that credentialing certification bodies can do to meet your learning needs. And this is an example of the value that certification boards can bring. So this one's available right now. In 2022, we will have a preceptor certificate of mastery from CCI, specific to perioperative nursing. This is another example of innovative products that we can do. We're good. Certification boards like ISHM, we're really good at writing tests, and testing is part of this. But this is an example of things that we can do besides just a certification exam that we can offer. This preceptor certificate of mastery could be done for the people that precept in central processing, sterile processing. The people that are teaching the new people that we bring in our professions, we can up their education level and offer a very high quality product to them. This is an example of what certification boards can do. So in all of this transition, this friction, this thing of membership organizations trying to figure out their relationship to the certification boards, in all of this changing, CCI believes there's new partnerships and new opportunity. And for Brett and Melanie, who are, they're doing the tech end of this presentation. I'm closing in. I say we have about 5 minutes more of presentation, Brett, just to give you the early warning. CCI sees tremendous opportunity here for certification boards, and both the other certification boards. I have showed you examples of things like the Isham Foundation and the funding and all the different things that they offer, these innovative techniques that help you with your professional development. These are the examples of the opportunities. So CCI actually now is working with other groups, to include Isham, to offer more materials on our websites. We recently have partnered with the Association of Nurses in Professional Development to offer a new credential. This one is for nurses only, for nurses that do professional development, and they hold a master's degree, and they're working at in a complex role, like system level education. This is a brand new credential for us that launched this year. This one, you don't have to take a test. It's a professional portfolio, which is another example of how we can meet the needs of our certificates. Another example. So this is another example on how industry can work with certification bodies. This is a digital badge, a microcredential, which we developed with this company. Jim pronounces it Monlique. They produce products that are used to prevent pressure injuries in the operating room, and they also make surgical gloves. They provided all of the content, and then we linked our two LMS systems, and you can earn a digital badge, a micro-credential on this one little bit of knowledge, which is only part of your practice as an operating room nurse. But this is what's possible when you leverage the resources of the certification bodies and their expertise, and how you can build up tests, learning management systems. This is what's possible in the future. And for nurses, there's no charge. This is provided by industry, a high quality credential, not a certification, in this one body of knowledge. But this is kind of the big reveal here. We now offer a digital badge. We document it with the digital badge. This is a micro-credential, which is a partnership between Beyond Clean and CCI. This is open to sterile processing, central processing professionals. This is offered jointly as a collaboration between CCI. CCI believes strongly in the benefit of nurses and other professions like central processing working together. So, Melanie, I do see your question. Certificates of mastery may or may not involve a test or quiz. It may be other learning activities, but the document documentation is a certificate which documents exactly what you covered, what you learned, and how you did that. On your resume, you can list that as additional learning activities, but you don't get initials after your name. And typically, they're time limited. And new content comes out. That's the difference between a certificate of mastery. You mastered typically a smaller body of knowledge, and a certification, which is more expansive and broader. And certifications involve either, well, almost all of them involve testing. Some, like our one credential, may involve a portfolio, but those are typically broader and more difficult to accomplish than a certificate of mastery. So right now, we offer a number of certificates of mastery at CCI. So if you have an interest in that particular body of knowledge, you can cover just that. And so the very first micro-credential done beyond Clean in partnership with CCI is cross-contamination. This one's up and running right now. And I'm very pleased to say we have over 100 people who are working on this already, and the majority of them are sterile processing professionals. There are some nurses that have done this, but not exclusively. So this is an opportunity where we can learn together. Most nurses find this material very challenging. And so some of them who connect to the work of central processing, if they want more knowledge, they take courses like this. This one does have a fee, but it does allow you to concentrate on very current topics on things like cross-contamination. So to do this one, you would complete a series of learning activities. I believe there's a quiz involved here, but you don't have to go to a testing center. And all of this is administered through our learning management system, and our credentialing team is available to help you with these. I do see a comment here from Kathleen. I want to address Brett's comment. Testing can cause anxiety for some people. If you want to, let's use the term credentialing. If you want to increase, you want to up your professional development activities, and you want to be better at your job, you could earn us a micro-credential or certificate of mastery, have that documented by a digital badge if you work with CCI and Beyond Clean, and increase your value to your employer and help you to deliver better care. These are the things that can be accomplished with certificates of mastery. We have plenty of resources. These are based on things like the ISHM standards, the ARIN guidelines for perioperative practice, sterilization, etc. Those are the resources that are available. But most of these micro-credentials, certificate of mastery, are self-contained. All the materials you need are in the course, which is the reason why, you have to pay a fee, because we had to assemble all the resources. For Kathleen, thank you for your comment. Increasing certifications, I will tell you, nursing is not the market leader here. ISHM, laws that require you to be certified to work in your profession. Nursing, perioperative nursing, is not the leader here. So congratulations for sterile processing, central processing professionals. You guys are ahead of nursing. You've actually been doing credentialing longer than we have, and you actually have laws that say you have, in some states, you have to be credentialed to work. Melanie, thank you. So to answer Melanie's question, tell you what, Melanie, Brett, let me finish the presentation, then I'm going to get into questions, because I see I have about 10 minutes. So this is an example of what's possible when certification boards work together with other partners. This is darn exciting. We have 100+ people working right now, and I think about 10 or 12 as of Monday have earned this digital badge. In 2022, there'll be 3 more, and then it will culminate in a certificate of mastery in this field. That's what's coming. So what does the future look like if Jim hit a crystal ball? Melanie actually has a very good question here. We think credentialing bodies have realized that we have a unique and a very valuable role in which we can contribute. And we think credentialing bodies like the big 3 that are here in the operating room, we think they can help you with things like competency assessment. And so we're nimble, we're innovative. We really do know how to do standardized tests. We have great psychometric resources on how to develop tests, how to assess your knowledge and your competency. And we're not membership models. So even if we don't have, if members said, well, I've liked the way we've done it forever, why do we have to change? We don't have that. If you want to hold our credentials, our certifications, our micro-credentials, you want to earn them, you can if that works for you. But we don't have to have a vote. We can develop products if they meet your learning needs, your professional development needs, and we can put them out there and see how they work for the profession. All right, Melanie, Brett, that's my last slide. This is my contact information if you want to reach me. This is actually the phone that's sitting on the desk in this room where I'm presenting. If you want to text me and ask me questions, that's my email. CCI loves to work with the other professions like sterile processing, central processing. We love to work together. We think we're stronger and better if we learn together and we collaborate. That's why we do events like this, and this is why we partner with Beyond Clean. Melanie, to your question, is there a digital badge for CNOR? There will be in 2022. It'll be for purchase, that you'll be able to purchase a digital badge. We have 42,000 people in the world that hold CNOR. If you want a digital badge that can you can put on your LinkedIn profile and show people, what does CNOR mean? That will be available in 2022. Brett, your question, and could I pause here and let Brett and Melanie comment, and I'll get a sip of water? But I will address, Brett, your question. I'll address that in a moment.
Yeah, and I can verbalize it a little bit because I think, you and I have discussed this, on one-on-ones and conversations, but, we have the vendors, right, that our nurse practitioners work with. We have our sterile processing techs work with, our managers, directors, educators. So their vendors have a very instrumental, process in helping, our healthcare pros do what they do. And, I've always felt that having some sort of a certification for them is worthwhile. And probably should be required to some extent if they're going to be working with clinicians. So are there any programs for vendors to consider so they're more accountable in the process improvements and development of departmental practices and growth?
Actually, there are. I would have a difficult time working all the way back to my slides, but ISHM does offer certification for vendors. The difficulty that we have here, there's no, there's a lot of laws, regulations about who can be in an operating room or, in a place where you do sterilization. And it's really kind of a mixed bag. So It isn't an absolute requirement in every location in the world. In the United States, you have to have a certain credential in order to be a vendor and work in the operating room. There are commercial entities that will do stuff like assemble your record and you have all your immunizations and you don't currently have some infectious disease. There are credentialing programs. I only know of one certification for vendors that work in the operating room, and that is the one offered by Isham. It's relatively small. I think there's a few hundred vendors that hold it. Brett, I would say that's an opportunity for certification bodies, credentialing organizations, that we could explore that. I will say for anybody that has connections, CCI could collaborate and offer a digital badge. It would probably have to be for a fee because they're expensive to set up, but we have the capacity that we can do that and then issue a digital badge. So when this vendor shows up, he could say, I've actually taken coursework. I understand how central processing works. And, I have to get dressed, how I dress out, the whole thing. That, in theory, could be done. And CCI has the capacity to do that. Brett, we might think about that, another project that we can work on together.
Right. Yeah. May have just opened up another door here. But I do think it's really important. And because I come from the vendor side and I've been in the facilities, I've seen and heard misinformation spoken, and also a lack of understanding when it comes to but just standards, guidelines, and really knowing that process. Because to me, if you are selling a product, you really need to know what goes into that. You need to know who's working on what, how the process is oriented, and then you can better speak to the usage of the products. But really understanding the baseline of everything is really important from my side, from my opinion.
So, Brett, I think there's an opportunity there to offer some sort of credential. I think that is a great opportunity for a vendor to collaborate with groups like Beyond Clean and CCI to start to establish a standard or a benchmark for these sorts of credentials. That's a great question. So,
yeah,
Brett,
a lot of things to explore on that front.
Yes. Any other questions, comments? Because I see we have about a minute left. Last minute things for Jim, comments?
Well,
yeah,
I can actually just, go ahead.
Go ahead. Nope,
oh, okay.
That's all
I was
you.
going to say, I can actually give you a little bit of feedback from the person, working through certification requirements and whatnot. I've done some of these crossword puzzles. I've sat down and done several of the things that CCI has in their store. So if you happen to be working on a CNOR and are trying to get your points that you need, CCI really does have everything there. Then the crossword puzzles are quite entertaining and very simple. Get a few points when you do them. It's not that difficult. But I have taken advantage of all of those, Jim, so I am very appreciative that they are on y'all's website.
And you know what, CCI in the big scheme of things, this is my last statement here as we close out. We have set up a learning management system with those online enduring materials, some provided by industry. You don't ever have to leave your couch. You could earn all of your points for your research, and we do the record keeping for you in the tally, and it's linked to the registration system. And for probably 95% of the content that's in there, there is no additional charge. All you have to do is have an active credential, and they're available without additional charge. So trying to provide value for our certificates.
Definitely. It's been beneficial to me.
All right.
All right. Well, I think that we're at time, and I will go ahead and close this out here. But if you do have any questions for Jim that we did not get to, please feel free to email him directly. He will gladly answer them. You can certainly send those over to us. We can relay them to Jim as well. But Jim, we really do thank you for joining us. It was a really good overview of what CCI offers, how credentialing and just the nature of staying on top of educational topics is so important in this industry each and every day. So really appreciate it. Thank everybody out there for joining us. There'll be a short 15-minute break before the next session. And the next session, please stay tuned. It's dedicated to electrosurgery. And that's going to be a good one. So stick around. We will see you soon. And thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Jim.